Humiliated by her simple appearance, a woman is treated as invisible in a luxurious salon. Amidst laughter and contempt, no one imagines that something unexpected is about to happen. When a millionaire chooses her in front of everyone, the environment goes into shock, and the ignored woman becomes the center of a turnaround impossible to ignore. If you like stories of love and romance, watch until the end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comment saying where you are listening to this beautiful story from. We continue. Marina Cardoso never imagined that her life could be summarized by a gray uniform and a cleaning cart. At 27, she woke up every day at 5 in the morning to take 2 buses to Jardins in São Paulo, where she worked as a cleaning and general services assistant for a luxury events company. The routine was always the same. Arrive before everyone else, prepare the spaces, serve drinks when necessary, collect plates, clean up whatever got dirty, and, above all, remain invisible. That was the unwritten but absolutely clear rule. People like her were not meant to be noticed. She was supposed to exist just enough for everything to function perfectly, and then disappear as if she had never been there. She grew up in Cidade Tiradentes in the East Zone, sharing a 3-room shack with her mother, 2 younger sisters, and a stepfather who drank too much and worked too little. Since she was 14, Marina had done odd jobs, babysitting, doing laundry for others, selling brigadeiros at the school gates. When she got a formal contract with the events company at 22, she felt she had finally found some stability. The salary wasn't large, but it was fixed. It was enough to help at home, pay for the technology and administration degree she was pursuing at night, and still have a little left to save. She dreamed of one day opening a small business of her own, maybe a party supply store, who knows, something that would take her out of that condition of serving without being seen. But dreams, Marina learned early on, had a bad habit of staying tucked away in the back of a drawer, while real life demanded immediate attention. And real life, on that Friday in November, was particularly demanding. The company had been hired to organize a charity cocktail at the Palacio dos Cedros, a historic mansion transformed into an event space in the heart of Jardins. The theme was fundraising for an education NGO, but everyone knew the real purpose was different: to formally present the top candidates to become the future wife of Rafael Almeida Brandão, the 34-year-old heir to the Grupo Brandão, a conglomerate that controlled everything from construction companies to hotel chains and shopping centers across the country. The Brandão family was the kind of name that needed no introduction in São Paulo. They appeared in magazines, led business boards, and had frequented the same elite clubs in São Paulo for generations, and Rafael, the eldest son, was considered one of the most coveted bachelors in the country. Handsome in a classic way, with sharp features, black hair always neatly cut, and dark eyes that conveyed seriousness, he carried that air of someone born knowing he would be important. With a degree in administration and economics, and an MBA from London, Rafael had taken over part of the group's executive presidency at 30, and since then had been prepared to take his father's place when he retired. But there was a problem. Rafael remained single, and his mother, Beatriz Almeida Brandão, was determined to resolve this issue. For her, marriage was not a matter of the heart, but of strategy. Her son needed a wife who was up to the family name, who brought useful connections, who knew how to move in the right circles, and who, above all, would not cause any kind of embarrassment or scandal. Therefore, that night's cocktail had a well-defined script: to introduce Rafael to young women from traditional families, all carefully selected by Beatriz and her circle of influential friends. Marina knew all about this because, when you work serving the elite, secrets stop being secrets. Conversations happened as if the employees had no ears. She heard everything while organizing the tables, adjusting the chairs, checking if the glasses were impeccable. She heard about the candidates, about the families, about the interests at stake. She heard and pretended she didn't, because that was another rule: never show that you know something you shouldn't know. The main hall of the Palacio dos Cedros was stunning that night. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden light onto the marble floor, gigantic floral arrangements decorated every corner, and waiters circulated with trays of French champagne and sophisticated canapés. Marina was in the support area, helping to restock the kitchen supplies, when she heard the alarm on one of the ovens. She ran to turn it off before a batch of vol au vents burned, but on the way, she bumped into one of the waitresses who was rushing out with a full tray. The impact was inevitable. The tray flew. Champagne glasses shattered on the marble floor with a crash that echoed through the entire hall, interrupting the conversations. Marina felt the cold liquid splash onto her uniform while shards of glass scattered around her feet. The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes in the room turned to her, not to the waitress who had been running without looking forward, but to Marina, who stood in the middle of the mess, her face burning with shame. That was when the laughter began. Not loud laughter, but that kind of restrained giggling muffled behind well-manicured hands, accompanied by looks of superiority and whispered comments that were loud enough to be heard. My God, what a disaster. These girls don't have the slightest clue. I don't know how they hire people like this for events of this level. Look at her clothes. It seems she doesn't even know where she is. Marina lowered her head and began to pick up the shards with trembling hands, trying to erase her own existence. The event supervisor appeared with a dustpan and a broom, casting her a furious look that clearly said, "You're going to pay for this." Marina murmured apologies that no one wanted to hear and finished cleaning as fast as she could. When she finally managed to leave the main hall and return to the service area, she felt tears burning, but she didn't let them fall. Crying was a luxury she couldn't afford in the middle of her shift. The cocktail continued as if nothing had happened. The candidates paraded their designer dresses, their inherited jewelry, their practiced smiles. Marina went back to work, serving drinks in the outdoor garden area, away from the main hall. She preferred it that way. The more distant, the better. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Rafael Almeida Brandão was bored. Deeply, irredeemably bored. He circulated through the hall playing his role as host, greeting acquaintances, exchanging empty pleasantries with the young women his mother introduced one after another. They all seemed to come from the same mold. Beautiful, well-dressed, polite, saying exactly what was expected of them. None said anything that really mattered. None seemed real. Marcela Tavares was the declared favorite. The daughter of an agribusiness tycoon, a graduate in international relations with consulting experience and fluency in 4 languages, she had all the attributes a future Brando wife should have. She spoke fluently about economics, art, and international politics. She knew exactly when to smile, when to agree, and when to make a comment clever enough to impress without outshining. Rafael recognized the performance because he himself executed a similar version every day. It was when he went out to the garden, seeking a few minutes of peace away from the hall, that he saw her. A woman in a grey uniform was collecting glasses and plates from the outdoor tables. She worked in silence, with efficient and discreet movements, as if she wanted to complete the task without anyone noticing her presence. Her brown hair was tied in a simple ponytail, and she kept her eyes down, focused on the work. There was nothing extraordinary about the scene. It was exactly the kind of thing that happened at every event and that no one paid attention to. But Raphael paid attention. Perhaps it was the contrast. In the middle of so much staging, so much calculated performance, there was something genuine about that woman who simply did her job without expecting recognition or attention. Or maybe it was just the weariness of his own farce that made him notice someone who clearly was not there to impress anyone. Whatever the reason, he found himself watching. It was when she raised her face for a brief moment, as if feeling the weight of the gaze, that their eyes met. For 2, maybe 3 seconds, there was a silent connection that Raphael didn't know how to name. She had deep, tired brown eyes, but there was something there that he hadn't seen in the eyes of the people around him for a long time. Truth, not performance, not a mask, not calculation. Just the naked reality of someone who worked hard to survive and who didn't have time to pretend to be someone else. Marina quickly looked away, startled to have been caught staring at one of the guests. She went back to work with her heart racing, praying the man hadn't found it disrespectful. She had no idea who he was. She only knew he wore a suit that probably cost more than she earned in 6 months, and that he had that air of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Raphael returned to the hall, but the image of that woman in the grey uniform didn't leave his head. It was irrational, it was inexplicable, but it was real. For the first time in months, something had truly piqued his attention. When the event ended and the guests began to say their goodbyes, Raphael sought out the service coordinator and asked a question that surprised the man. "The girl in the grey uniform who was working in the garden, what is her name?" The coordinator hesitated, confused. "Sir?" The employee, brown hair tied back. She was collecting glasses in the garden. "Ah, yes, Marina. Marina Cardoso, General Services Assistant." Raphael nodded. "I want her to be present at the dinner tomorrow night." The coordinator blinked, not understanding. "Pardon me, sir, but she is part of the cleaning crew. She is not part of the hall service." "It doesn't matter. I want her to be present, not as an employee, as a guest." The silence that followed was heavy. The coordinator swallowed hard. "Understood, sir. I will arrange it." Raphael gave no further explanations. He didn't need to. He knew the order would be followed because orders coming from someone with the Brandon surname were always followed. What he didn't know was that this decision would change everything, for him and especially for Marina Cardoso. Marina only found out the news the next day, when the supervisor called her into the storage room, with an expression between surprise and discomfort. "Marina, I need to talk to you." She felt her stomach tighten. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, or rather, I don't know." The supervisor crossed her arms. "You have to attend the dinner tonight as a guest." Marina's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "It was a direct request from Raphael Brando. Don't ask me why, because I don't know either. I just know you have to be there." "But I can't. I don't have clothes for that. I don't—" "It's already settled. They will pick you up at 6 to get you ready. You just need to show up." Marina felt the ground disappear from under her feet. It wasn't an invitation. It was an order disguised as kindness. And she knew, with the painful certainty of someone who always had to obey to survive, that she had no choice but to accept. That night, while waiting for the car that would pick her up, Marina looked at her own reflection in the cracked mirror of the bathroom of the house where she lived and felt fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of humiliation, fear of stepping into a world where she didn't belong. But she didn't know that fear was just the beginning. What would come next would change her life in a way she could never have imagined. The car that came to pick up Marina was black, luxurious and completely outside her reality. The driver opened the back door without smiling, and she got in feeling like an imposter. During the entire trip to a beauty salon in Jardins, she remained silent, clutching her old purse in her lap and trying to understand what was happening. Why on earth would a man like Raphael Brando have requested her presence? Was it some kind of misunderstanding? Would she be humiliated again in front of everyone? At the salon, 3 women received her with expressions that mixed professionalism and poorly disguised curiosity. They washed her hair, gave her a simple blowout, and applied discreet makeup. There was no excessive luxury, nothing that drew too much attention, but it was clear they wanted her to look presentable. When they finished, they presented the dress, a navy blue model, simple, made of good fabric, but without shine or extravagance. It was beautiful, but clearly chosen not to compete with the dresses of the other women who would be at the dinner. Marina understood the message. They could dress her, fix her up, but they would never let her forget that she didn't belong to that world. When she arrived at Palacio dos Cedros for the second time, her heart was beating so hard she could feel the pulse in her neck. The hall was even more imposing than the night before. The tables were decorated with white and gold flower arrangements. The lighting was soft and strategic, creating an atmosphere of absolute sophistication. There were about 50 guests, all dressed in the casual elegance of the very rich, the men in suits without ties, the women in dresses by renowned designers, discreet but very expensive jewelry shining on necks and wrists. Marina was led to a corner of the hall near one of the windows, where there was an empty chair at a smaller, almost hidden table. There she sat down and tried to make herself invisible, exactly as she did when she worked. She kept her eyes down, her hands on her lap, breathing slowly to control her nervousness. The conversations around her flowed naturally, punctuated by elegant laughter and mentions of places she only knew by name: Aspen, Tuscany, the Maldives. It was when Marcela Tavares entered the hall that Marina felt the weight of the difference. She wore an emerald green dress that fit her slender body perfectly. Her blonde hair fell in impeccable waves over her bare shoulders, and she wore a diamond necklace that probably cost more than Marina would earn in her entire life. Marcella smiled at everyone with the confidence of someone who knows she is admired, greeted acquaintances with light kisses, and positioned herself near the main table, beside Beatrice Brandon, the family matriarch. Other young women were also present. Livia, the daughter of a judge, a law graduate and active participant in charity boards. Fernanda, heir to a traditional coffee-growing family with a master's degree from Paris. Isadora, granddaughter of a former governor, a model and digital influencer with millions of followers. All beautiful, all polite, all perfectly suited for the role of the future Brandon wife. And then, in the middle of them was Marina. In a simple dress, without jewelry, without an important surname, without anything that qualified her to be there. She could feel the looks, she could sense the whispers. The women observed her with a mix of curiosity and disdain, trying to understand what that out-of-place girl was doing, sitting at that dinner. It was Livia who broke the silence by approaching Beatrice Brandon with a poisonous smile. "Beatrice, dear, I think there's been a mistake. There's one of the employees sitting over there in the corner." Beatrice frowned and looked in the indicated direction. Her eyes met Marina's, and the expression that formed on her face was one of pure disgust. "What do you mean?" "She was working yesterday serving drinks. I remember perfectly. She was the one who dropped the tray and made that embarrassing scene." The comment was loud enough for several people to hear. The conversations around decreased in volume as gazes turned toward Marina. She felt her face burn, her stomach churn. She wanted to disappear, evaporate, cease to exist. Beatrice called one of the organizers with an imperious gesture. "Why is this girl here?" The man swallowed hard. "It was a special request, ma'am, from Mr. Raphael." The silence that followed was even heavier. Beatrice widened her eyes, incredulous. "From my son?" "Yes, ma'am." Marcella, who was close enough to hear the conversation, turned slowly to look at Marina. The expression on her face changed from curiosity to something more dangerous, threat. She approached the table where Marina was, followed by Livia and Fernanda, like a pack of predators surrounding their prey. "So it's you," Marcella said, her voice soft but sharp. "The little girl who caught Raphael's attention." Marina looked up, startled. I didn't catch anyone's attention. I don't even know why I'm here." "So of course you don't." Marcella laughed, a cold sound. "Girls like you never know, do they, always playing innocent." "Let me guess." Livia joined the conversation, crossing her arms. "You must have made some scene, cried, invented some sad story. It's always like that." "I didn't do anything," Marina replied, her voice coming out weaker than she would have liked. "I just work here. Or rather, I did work here." "Did?" Fernanda arched a perfectly drawn eyebrow. "Ah, how interesting. Lost your job and now you're trying for an upgrade. How convenient." Marina felt the tears burning, but she held them back with force. She wasn't going to cry in front of them. She wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. "I'm not trying for anything. I didn't ask to be here." "Of course not." Marcella leaned in, resting her hands on the table. "But since you are here, let me give you some free advice. This little world, it's not for you. You might have managed to trick Raphael for a second with this Cinderella story of yours, but it won't last. He will realize you have nothing to offer. No connections, no real education, no value. And when that happens, you will go back to your place, which is down there, where you've always been." The words cut deep, deeper than Marina expected. Because deep down she knew Marcella was saying exactly what everyone thought, what she herself thought. That was when a deep voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Marcella." They all turned. Raphael Brandon was standing a few meters away, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. He wore a dark grey suit that highlighted his broad shoulders, and there was something in his posture that radiated effortless authority. The women instinctively moved away from Marina, like children caught doing something wrong. "Raphael, dear," Marcella quickly recovered her smile. "We were just getting to know your guest." "I noticed." Raphael walked to the table where Marina was, completely ignoring the other women, his dark eyes fixed on her, and Marina felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "Marina." She blinked, surprised that he knew her name. "Mr. Brando." "Raphael, you can call me Raphael." He held out his hand. "Would you like to come with me?" Marina looked at the outstretched hand as if it were a trap. Everyone in the hall was watching now. Everyone. Beatrice Brandon watched from the main table with an expression of shock and disapproval. Marcella had her lips pressed into a thin line. The other guests whispered among themselves. I think it's better if I leave, Marina whispered. I shouldn't be here. You are here because I wanted you to be. Raphael's voice was firm, leaving no room for discussion. And now I'm asking you to come with me. Please. There was something in that please that wasn't really a request, but it wasn't a cold order either. It was an invitation, a real invitation. And Marina, against all the instincts screaming at her to run, accepted his hand and stood up. The entire hall seemed to freeze as Raphael led Marina to the main table, where the most important seats were. He pulled out a chair for her, right next to the place clearly reserved for him, and completely ignored his mother's furious gaze. "Raphael," Beatrice hissed, trying to maintain her composure, "what are you doing?" "Having dinner with my guest," he replied simply, sitting down next to Marina. "Your guest?" "Raphael, this girl is an employee. She has an invitation from me, Mother. That is all that matters." The dinner that followed was the most embarrassing of Marina's life. She could barely touch the food, no matter how delicious it was. She felt the heavy stares, the silent judgments, the tension emanating from every corner of the hall. Raphael tried to strike up a conversation, asking questions about her life, her work, her plans, but she answered in monosyllables, completely out of sorts. On the other side of the table, Marcella kept a fixed smile on her face, but her eyes were like ice. Beatrice practically didn't touch her food, too busy casting withering looks at her son. The other guests oscillated between embarrassment and morbid curiosity, clearly wondering what kind of scandal they were witnessing. When dinner finally ended and people began to say their goodbyes, Marina took advantage of the moment of distraction to try to escape. She stood up discreetly and walked toward the exit, but Raphael caught up with her before she reached the door. "Marina, wait!" She stopped but didn't turn around. "I need to go." "I know this was difficult. It wasn't my intention to put you in an uncomfortable situation." Marina finally turned, and for the first time she let him see the anger in her eyes. "It wasn't your intention? You brought me to a place where I clearly don't belong, sat me in front of people who hate me, exposed me to everyone, and it wasn't your intention to put me in an uncomfortable situation?" Raphael seemed genuinely surprised by the outburst. "I just wanted what? To have fun? To prove a point? Because I can guarantee that whatever you wanted, it wasn't worth it. Not for me." Tears finally escaped, and Marina wiped them away angrily. "People like me can't afford to be the entertainment for rich people. We need to work, pay bills, survive, and now because of you I'll probably lose my job." "What? No, you won't!" "Yes, I will. Do you think after today they'll want me back? After I became the biggest embarrassment of the night?" Marina shook her head, feeling exhaustion take over. "You live in another world, Raphael. A world where things don't have real consequences. But for me, everything has a consequence." She left before he could respond, went down the steps of the Palacio dos Cedros, and ordered an Uber with the last few reais she had in her account. During the entire trip back to Cidade Tiradentes, she cried in silence, feeling that her life, which was already difficult, had just crumbled a little more. And she was right. On Monday, when she called the events company, she heard the supervisor's cold voice. "Marina, you don't need to come in anymore. Your contract has been terminated." "But why?" "You know why. You caused embarrassment with one of our most important clients. We cannot keep employees who don't know their place." Marina hung up the phone and sat on the bed, looking at the cramped room, the peeling walls, the window that overlooked the alley where children played in the middle of accumulated trash. She was 27 years old, had no job, bills to pay, and a family that depended on her. And all because, for a brief moment, a rich man had decided she was interesting. Marina didn't know if she should hate Raphael Brandon or herself. In the end, she decided it didn't matter. The result was the same. She was once again on the ground, trying to figure out how to get up when the weight of the world seemed too great. The weeks that followed were the worst of Marina's life. Without the fixed salary from the events company, she had to accept the first job that appeared, a cleaning assistant in a public hospital in the East Zone. The salary was lower, the shifts were at night, and the work was 3 times heavier. She cleaned bathrooms, wards and hallways that smelled of disinfectant mixed with sickness. She would return home at 7 in the morning, sleep for a few hours, and wake up to take care of her younger sisters, cook, and try to study for her college exams, which she was about to drop out of because she lacked the money to pay the monthly tuition. Her mother, Rosangela, didn't help. She spent her days complaining that Marina had lost a good job, that she had done something stupid, and that now the whole family would suffer because of her irresponsibility. Her stepfather, Ivandro, was unemployed again and drinking more and more, turning the house into an emotional minefield where anything could turn into a fight. "Oh, you've always been stubborn," Rosangela said on a particularly difficult night, while Marina was trying to study at the kitchen table, always thinking you're better than everyone, always wanting to move up in life, and look where it got you. You lost your job because you wanted to show off. "I didn't want to show off, Mother," Marina replied, too tired to argue. "I just went to work. And you managed to get into trouble anyway. That's a gift." Rosangela lit a cigarette, blowing out the smoke with irritation. "And now? Are you going to be able to pay the bills with this hospital cleaning job?" Marina didn't answer, because the answer was no, she couldn't. She was behind on the rent, she had cut expenses to the maximum, but it still wasn't enough. Her sisters needed school supplies, the electricity bill was about to be cut, and she was so tired that sometimes she didn't know if she could handle getting out of bed for another shift. It was on one of those nights, when she left the hospital at 6:30 in the morning, that she saw the black car parked in front of the bus stop, the same car that had come to pick her up weeks ago. Marina felt her stomach tighten. She quickened her pace, trying to ignore it, but the back door opened and Raphael stepped out. "Marina." She stopped but didn't turn around. "What do you want?" "To talk. I have nothing to say to you." Raphael walked until he was beside her. He looked tired, with dark shadows under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept well either. "I know things have become difficult for you. I know you lost your job, and "You don't know anything," Marina interrupted him, finally turning to face him. "You live in a mansion, you ride in a car with a driver, you've never spent a day of your life worrying if you'll have money for food. You don't have the slightest idea of what is difficult." "You're right." The agreement took her by surprise. "I don't know what your life is like, but I want to understand. I want to help." "Help?" Marina laughed, a humorless sound. "How, by giving me money, by offering me a pity job? Or do you think you'll solve everything with your charity and I'll be grateful and quiet?" "It's not that." "Then what is it? Why won't you leave me alone? Why did you get obsessed with the employee in the grey uniform? Was it to prove you can have anything you want? To feel special for noticing someone invisible?" Raphael was silent for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was lower, more honest. "Because you were the only real person I found in that place. Everyone was playing a role, saying what they thought I wanted to hear, selling themselves to move up in life, and you were just trying to survive. No pretense, no games, no mask. And when I looked at you for the first time in a long time, I felt I was looking at someone real." Marina felt something tighten in her chest, but she pushed the feeling away. "And you thought that gave you the right to destroy my life?" "No, and I didn't want that. I just wanted to know you, wanted to know who you were." He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "I know I did everything wrong. I know I put you in a horrible situation, and I'm sorry. Sincerely." "Your apology doesn't pay my bills." "I know. That's why I want to offer you a job. A real job, not charity. In the administrative department of Grupo Brandão, with a fair salary, benefits, opportunity for growth." Marina stared at him as if he had gone mad. "You're joking." "I'm not." "Do you really think I'm going to accept working for you? After everything?" "It wouldn't be for me, it would be for you, for your family, for your future." "A future where I owe you favors? Where everyone will say I only got the job because I caught the big boss's attention?" Marina shook her head. "I don't need charity. I need my dignity. And I'm trying to give you back exactly that. A chance to have a dignified job, instead of killing yourself in hospital night shifts." "How do you know where I work?" Raphael hesitated. "I wanted to know how you were." "You investigated me?" The anger returned with full force. "Who do you think you are?" "Someone who cares." "You don't know me well enough to care." "Then let me get to know you." The two stood there in the empty street at dawn, breathless, looking at each other as if in a silent arm-wrestling match. Marina felt tears burning again, but this time they were from exhaustion, from frustration, from so much accumulated weight. "Please," Raphael said, his voice softer. "Just accept the job. After that, if you want me to disappear from your life, I'll disappear. But at least let me correct the mistake I made." Marina wanted to say no. She wanted to send him away and never see him again. But she was also a realist. She needed money. Her family needed it, and pride, as important as it was, didn't pay bills. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her voice tired. "Fine, I can wait." Marina caught the bus that had just arrived and didn't look back. But during the entire trip home, she couldn't get Raphael out of her head. In the following days, he didn't give up. He began to show up at the hospital discreetly, bringing coffee, offering rides, leaving notes with his number. Marina refused everything, but he persisted with a patience she didn't expect from someone accustomed to being served immediately. It was when Marina arrived home one day and found a man in a suit waiting at the door that everything changed again. He introduced himself as a lawyer and handed her an envelope. "Miss Marina Cardoso?" "Yes. I was hired to deliver this personally." Marina opened the envelope and felt her blood run cold. It was a summons. The events company was suing her for moral and financial damages caused by inappropriate behavior during a private event. They were asking for an indemnity of 50,000 reais. 50,000 reais. Marina didn't even have 1,000 reais in her account. Her hands shook as she read the document. It was absurd, it was clearly retaliation, but it was real, and she had no way to defend herself. She had no money for a lawyer, no way to prove she hadn't done anything wrong. When Raphael showed up at the hospital that night, Marina didn't refuse the conversation this time. "They are suing me," she said, handing the summons to him. Raphael read the document with an increasingly grim expression. "This is ridiculous. They have no basis for this lawsuit. It doesn't matter. They have money for lawyers, I don't. I will take care of this." "No, I don't want anything else from you." Marina took the document back. "That's enough. Everything you've done has only made my life worse. So please, for the love of God, leave me alone." "Marina, I'm serious." She turned to enter the hospital. "I don't want to see you anymore." But as she walked through the cold corridors of the hospital, mopping the floor with mechanical movements, Marina knew she was cornered. There was no way out. No way to pay a lawyer, no way to face the lawsuit, no way to defend herself. And worst of all was that a small part of her, a part that hated to admit it existed, wanted to accept Raphael's help. She wanted to believe he truly cared, that it wasn't just guilt or a whim. But accepting help meant becoming dependent. It meant owing favors. It meant opening a door she might not be able to close later. Marina spent the whole night thinking, cleaning, exhausting her body to try to quiet her mind. And when the shift finally ended and she went out to the street, she found Raphael waiting again. This time she didn't run. "The lawsuit," she said bluntly. "If you make it disappear, I'll accept the job." Raphael nodded. "I'll resolve it today. And after that we keep our distance. You are my boss, I am your employee, nothing more. If that's what you want." "It is." Marina took a deep breath. "Because I can't afford to trust you, Raphael. I can't afford to believe that someone like you can truly care about someone like me. I've been stung too many times in life to still believe in fairy tales." Raphael looked at her with an expression Marina couldn't decipher. Sadness, perhaps, or determination. "All right," he said, "but one day you'll realize this isn't a fairy tale, it's real." Marina got into the car he offered because she was too tired to take the bus, and throughout the trip, she kept looking out the window, trying not to think about the fact that for the first time in weeks, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope, and that scared her more than any lawsuit ever could. Marina started at Grupo Brandão the following Monday. The lawsuit had mysteriously disappeared, and she received a formal apology from the events company, along with an impeccable recommendation letter that seemed to have been written in a parallel universe where she was the model employee. It was all Raphael's work, no doubt, but Marina didn't comment. She just thanked him in silence and decided to move on. The job was in the administrative department, analyzing contracts and organizing documentation for real estate expansion projects. It was a real job, with a formal contract, a salary that tripled what she earned before, health insurance, and meal vouchers. Marina arrived at 8 in the morning, worked in a room with 6 other people, and left at 6 in the evening. Normal routine, honest work. But nothing was really normal. Everyone knew who she was. The news that Raphael Brandot had protected a humble employee at an elite dinner had circulated among the staff like wildfire. There were those who looked at her with curiosity, those who looked with envy, and those who looked with poorly disguised contempt, as if she had obtained the job through immoral means. Marina ignored the looks and focused on the work. She always arrived 15 minutes early, stayed late when necessary, never complained, never asked for favors. She wanted to prove, to herself more than to anyone else, that she deserved to be there. Raphael kept his word. He didn't seek her out, didn't show up in her department, didn't send messages. From afar, sometimes, Marina saw him in the corridors of the group's headquarters, always surrounded by executives, always with that posture of someone born to command. He never looked in her direction, and Marina told herself it was better that way. But at night, when she was alone in the cramped room she shared with her sisters, she thought of him. She thought of the words he had said, the way he had looked at her, the persistence with which he had tried to get close, and a small, dangerous part of Marina wondered what would have happened if she had let her defenses down. If she had believed even for a second that someone like Raphael could truly want someone like her. But she pushed those thoughts away, because dreaming was dangerous. Dreaming of impossible things only brought pain. Meanwhile, Raphael was being suffocated. Since the disastrous dinner, Beatrice Brandot had shown no mercy. She called weekly family meetings where the only subject was the embarrassing situation her son had created. Marcela Tavares had been offended. Her family was demanding explanations, and worse. Other strategic alliances were being questioned because Raphael's reputation as a reliable fiancé had been tarnished. "You know what's at stake," Beatrice said, sitting in the living room of the Brandot mansion with a glass of white wine in her hand. "The Tavares family controls the largest investment bank in the South. An alliance with them would guarantee preferential financing for all our expansion projects. But you decided to throw that away because of an employee." "Mother, I didn't throw anything away. I just refused to participate in an arranged marriage as if we were in the 18th century. Don't be naive, Raphael. Marriages have always been strategic in families like ours. Your father and I—" "My father loved you," Raphael interrupted her. "It might have started as strategy, but it turned into real love. You always said that yourself." Beatrice was silent for a moment. Her face hardened. "And you think you'll find love with a cleaning lady?" "She's not a cleaning lady. She works in my administrative department and is extremely competent." "Because you put her there." Beatrice slammed her glass onto the table. "Raphael, wake up. This girl has nothing to offer. No connections, no influence, no capital. She is dead weight." "To you, maybe. To me, she is the only honest person I've met in years." "Honest?" Beatrice laughed, a bitter sound. "Do you really think she doesn't know exactly what she's doing? Girls like her always know. They play hard to get, dignified, innocent, until they get what they want." "You don't know her." "And you do. How many times have you talked to her? 3, 4? Beatrice stood up, crossing her arms. "You're letting yourself be carried away by a fantasy, Raphael. And meanwhile, you're destroying years of work, of building alliances, of strategic planning." Raphael also stood up, tired of the conversation. "I will choose who I want to be with, Mother, and it won't be based on profit spreadsheets." "Then you will lose everything." Beatrice's voice was icy now. "Because your uncle Alberto is more than willing to take over the presidency, and he has the support of half the board. If you continue with this adolescent rebellion, you will be replaced." Raphael stopped at the door and turned slowly. "Is that a threat?" "It's reality." Beatrice stared at him without blinking. "You have 2 weeks to correct this situation, end this ridiculous affair with the employee, apologize to the Tavares family, and announce an official engagement to Marcela, or face the consequences." Raphael left the room without responding, but the weight of the threat followed him for days. He knew his mother wasn't bluffing. Alberto Brandot, the younger brother of Raphael's late father, had been trying for years to take total control of the group, and with the right support on the board, he would succeed. It was then that Paulo, Rafael's childhood friend and the group's current legal director, knocked on his office door with a grave expression. "We need to talk." Rafael pointed to the chair in front of his desk. "About?" "About Marcela Tavares, or rather about the Tavares family." Paulo placed a folder on the table. "I did a discreet investigation, as you asked, and I found concerning things." Rafael opened the folder and began to read. With every page, his expression grew darker. The Tavares family was facing a severe financial crisis. The investment bank had massive exposure in high-risk operations that were going wrong. There was a federal investigation underway on suspicion of money laundering and tax fraud. And the marriage to Rafael wasn't about a strategic alliance, it was about survival. They needed the reputation and capital of Grupo Brandão to avoid bankruptcy and possibly prison. "They were using you," Paulo said. "The marriage was a desperate move." Rafael closed the folder, feeling anger grow. "Does my mother know about this?" "I don't know, but if she doesn't, she should." "And Marcela?" "Hard to say, but considering she was very committed to closing the deal, I would say yes." Rafael ran his hand over his face, exhausted. How many layers of lies existed around him? How many people were trying to use him for their own interests? "There's more," Paulo said hesitantly. "What?" "I found out that someone is trying to bribe employees in your administrative department to get information about Marina Cardoso." Rafael looked up, alert. "What kind of information?" "Anything that can be used against her. Debts, criminal history, questionable relationships. Anything that can force her out of the group or discredit her publicly." "Who is behind this?" "I haven't been able to confirm it yet, but my guess, Marcela or someone working for her." Rafael felt something cold settle in his chest. Marina was being attacked because of him. Again. "Put security on her, discreet but effective, and find out who is doing this." Paulo nodded and left. Rafael remained alone in his office, looking out the window at the lit-up city below. He had thought he could protect Marina simply by giving her a job and keeping his distance. But he was wrong. He had put her in danger just by caring about her. And now, he needed to decide, continue protecting her from afar or finally admit that what he felt was much more than responsibility. Marina found out she was being investigated by chance. One of her co-workers, Renata, pulled her into the bathroom during the lunch break with a worried expression. "Marina, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "A guy showed up yesterday offering money to anyone who gave information about you. 5,000 reais for anything useful." Marina felt her stomach churn. "What kind of information?" "Anything. Your friends, your family, debts, problems. He said it was for a labor lawsuit, but it didn't seem true." "And did anyone accept?" "I don't know, but I thought you should know." Marina thanked her and went back to her desk, but she couldn't concentrate for the rest of the day. At night, when she left the building, she found Rafael waiting in the garage. "We need to talk," he said. "About the people who are investigating me?" Rafael seemed surprised. "You know? I found out today. What the hell is going on, Rafael?" "Get in the car, please." This time, Marina got in without arguing. He drove to a discreet cafe away from the center and told her everything, about Marcela, about the Tavares financial situation, about his mother's threats, about the investigation. Marina listened to it all in silence, feeling the anger grow with every word. "So I'm a piece in a game," she said when he finished. "They want to destroy me to force you back into the original plan. I won't let that happen." "You can't stop it, Rafael." Marina slammed her hand on the table. "These people have money, power, influence. I have nothing. If they want to destroy me, they will. Not if you stay by my side." Marina laughed without humor. "By your side? Rafael, you live in a world completely different from mine. You think you can protect me, but you're only putting me in more danger." "Then what do you want me to do? Give up on you? Pretend that nothing exists between us? Does something exist between us?" Marina stared at him. "Because so far all that exists is you feeling guilty and me being attacked from all sides." Rafael was silent, and when he spoke his voice was different, lower, more honest. "You've been in my thoughts since that first night. You're the first thing I think of when I wake up and the last before I sleep. It was me going to the hospital just for a chance to see you, even from afar. It's me fighting my family, fighting pressure, fighting everything because the only thing I can think is that I don't want to live an entire life with anyone who isn't you. Marina felt tears burning. You don't know me. Then let me know you for real. And what if I disappoint you? What if you find out I'm not this amazing person you imagined? And what if I find out you're even better than I imagine? Marina closed her eyes, feeling the weight of all the decisions she would need to make. She could run again, protect herself, go back to her safety zone. Or she could, for the first time in her life, be brave enough to believe she deserved something good. I won't run, she said finally, but I won't be the helpless little girl waiting to be saved either. If they want a game, I'll play too. Raphael smiled, and it was the first time Marina saw a true smile on him. Then let's play together. The next 2 weeks were intense. Raphael and Marina worked in secret, gathering information, building a strategy. Paulo, the lawyer, became a crucial ally, investigating not only Marcela and the Tavares family, but also Alberto Brandão and the board members who supported him. What they discovered was a web of corruption, bribes, and illicit deals that went far beyond a simple arranged marriage. Marina, for the first time, stopped being just a victim of circumstances. She studied the documents Paulo provided, took notes, suggested strategies. Her administration background, which had always seemed insufficient next to the degrees from foreign universities held by the group's executives, now proved valuable. She understood numbers, she understood contracts, she understood how to identify inconsistencies. And more importantly, she understood how desperate people act when they are cornered. Marcela will try something dramatic at the closing dinner, Marina said in one of the secret meetings they held at Paulo's apartment. She knows she's losing ground. People like that don't retreat. They attack. What do you suggest? Raphael asked, watching her with an admiration he no longer tried to hide. Let her attack. But we need to have the defense ready. More than a defense, we need to turn the game around. It was then that Paulo brought the information that would change everything. I found something about Marcela, something big. He placed a series of documents on the table. She isn't just an accomplice in the family's schemes. She is the mastermind. She was the one who created the shell companies used to wash money. She was the one who forged tax documents. And more, she has a history of doing exactly this. Before returning to Brazil, she was expelled from a consultancy in London for fraud. Marina read the documents with growing attention. This is enough to destroy any credibility she still has. And to open a criminal investigation, Paulo added. If this comes to light at the right moment, she and her entire family will sink. At the dinner, Marina said, looking at Raphael. It has to be at the closing dinner in front of everyone. Raphael hesitated. This will be brutal. It will destroy her life. She was willing to destroy mine, Marina replied, and there was a hardness in her voice that didn't exist weeks ago. And yours too. She doesn't deserve pity. Marina is right, Paulo agreed. Besides, if you don't act now, you'll lose the chance. Beatriz has already sent out the invitations for the dinner. It's an official engagement announcement event. If you don't dismantle this farce there, it will be too late. Raphael looked at Marina, searching for something in her eyes. Are you sure? Because after we do this, there's no turning back. You will be placed at the center of a public scandal. They will attack you. They will say horrible things. They will try to destroy you in every way possible. Marina held his hand, and it was the first time she did so of her own accord. I know, but the difference is that this time I won't be alone, and this time I won't be afraid. In the days leading up to the dinner, Beatriz Brandão was radiant. She had gotten what she wanted. Raphael had given in, or at least that's what she thought. He had agreed to attend the dinner, had said he would make an important announcement, had left it implied that he would accept the engagement to Marcela. Beatriz didn't know that Raphael was just giving her enough rope to hang her own credibility. Marcela, for her part, was confident. She had chosen a stunning dress for the occasion, red, tight, with a neckline that bordered on provocative. She was certain that tonight she would finally win what she wanted, the Brandão name, the money, the power. And Marina? Well, Marina would be forgotten, perhaps even fired right after the announcement. But Marcela also didn't know that Marina wouldn't be forgotten, because Marina would be there. On the night of the dinner, Marina got ready in the small room she shared with her sisters. She didn't have a designer dress, she didn't have expensive jewelry, but Raphael had sent a gift, a simple, elegant black dress that highlighted her silhouette without trying to turn her into someone else. Along with it came a note: "Wear this if you want, but know that to me, you are already perfect, exactly as you are." Marina wore the gift, not out of obligation but by choice, because this time she wasn't being forced to be there. She was going because she wanted to, because she had something to prove. Not to Raphael, not to Beatrice, not to Marcela, to herself. When she arrived at Palacio dos Cedros, the atmosphere was even more luxurious than the previous times. It was the closing dinner, after all, the final choice everyone was waiting for. The main hall was decorated with white and gold flowers, candles lit in silver candelabras, and there was a small stage set up at the back where Raphael would make his announcement. Marina entered and immediately felt the stares. But this time she didn't lower her head. She walked with her back straight, her eyes firm, her dignity intact. There was fear, yes, but there was also something new: power. The power of someone who had nothing left to lose. Raphael saw her enter, and for the first time in public smiled openly at her. A small smile just for her, but it said everything that needed to be said. Beatrice also saw her and turned pale with rage. "What is she doing here?" "She is my guest, Mother," Raphael said calmly. "As I warned you, she would be." "Raphael, we had an agreement." "We had no agreement. You assumed I would do what you wanted. I let you assume it, but today everything becomes clear." Marcela approached, the confident smile still on her face. "Raphael, dear, I think it's time we started." "Yes, it is." Raphael climbed onto the small stage and took the microphone. The entire hall fell silent. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this dinner. I know many of you came expecting a specific announcement, an engagement perhaps, a strategic alliance between important families." Beatrice smiled, satisfied. Marcela smoothed her dress, preparing to go up to the stage. "But before any announcement," Raphael continued, "I think it's important that everyone knows some facts. Facts about integrity, about honesty, and about who truly deserves our trust." Beatrice's smile faltered. Marcela frowned. Raphael nodded to Paulo, who stepped onto the stage with a tablet. "In recent days, our legal department conducted an investigation into certain financial irregularities that came to our attention, and we discovered something quite disturbing." He began to present, slide by slide, evidence of the Tavares family's frauds: forged documents, offshore accounts, money laundering operations, and at the center of it all, Marcela. The hall exploded in murmurs. Marcela turned white, then red. "This is a lie. This is an absurd defamation." "Everything here is documented and verified," Raphael replied, his voice firm. "And it has already been forwarded to the competent authorities. You and your family will answer legally for all of this." "You can't do this," Marcela screamed, completely losing her composure. "We had an agreement. Your family needs ours." "My family doesn't need criminals," Raphael said, and the weight of the word echoed through the hall. Beatrice was in shock, sitting in her chair as if she had been slapped. Alberto Brandão tried to intervene, climbing onto the stage. "Raphael, this is an absurdity. You are destroying years of alliances." "I am destroying years of corruption," Raphael interrupted him. "And since we are revealing truths, Uncle, I think everyone here should know about the little scheme you and some board members were planning, about how you intended to remove me from the presidency through an administrative coup based on false information." Alberto turned pale. "You have no proof." "I do. Emails, recordings, documents, everything." Raphael crossed his arms. "So if I were you, I'd sit down and be quiet, while you still can." The silence in the hall was absolute now. No one knew where to look. That was when Raphael stepped down from the stage and walked directly toward Marina. "I came to this dinner with the promise to make an important announcement," he said, taking the microphone again, but speaking while looking only at her. "And I will. But it's not the announcement you expected." Marina felt her heart race. "For months I was pressured to choose a wife based on strategy, on convenience, on financial advantage. I was introduced to beautiful, educated, well-connected women who said everything I wanted to hear." He paused. "But in the middle of all this theater, I found someone real, someone who wasn't trying to impress me, someone who was just trying to survive with dignity in a world that insisted on knocking her down. Tears began to stream down Marina's face. Marina Cardoso doesn't have an important surname. She doesn't have a Swiss bank account. She doesn't have a degree from a foreign university. But she has something none of these other women have. She is true. And when I'm with her, I can be true too. Raphael knelt, right there in front of everyone. The billionaire heir kneeling in front of the girl of humble origin. "I'm not asking you to marry me right now," he said, and Marina laughed through her tears. "Because I know you need time. You need certainty. You need to know that this is real. But I'm asking for a chance to get to know you for real. Without pressure, without games, without interests. Just you and me, what do you say?" Marina looked around. She saw Marcella, her face contorted with hate. She saw Beatrice in shock. She saw the guests agape. She saw a hall full of rich and powerful people looking at her as if she were an alien. And then she looked at Raphael, at the man who had risked everything, who had faced his family, his business, social pressure, all for her. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I say yes." The hall exploded, some in applause, others in indignation. Marcella ran out, followed by members of her family. Beatrice stood up and left as well, rigid with fury. But Raphael didn't care. He stood up, pulled Marina into an embrace, and for the first time kissed her, right there in front of everyone who had mocked her, ridiculed her, tried to destroy her. And Marina, who had spent her entire life feeling invisible, finally felt seen, completely accepted, completely loved. The days following the dinner were chaotic. The news of the scandal involving the Tavares family spread through the media like an uncontrolled fire. Marcella was indicted for fraud and money laundering, and her family saw their financial empire crumble overnight. Federal investigations were opened, accounts were blocked, and the surname that was once synonymous with prestige became synonymous with corruption. For Marina, it was a difficult period of adjustment. Suddenly she was known, no longer invisible but exposed. Journalists tried to interview her, bloggers speculated about her life, social media debated whether she was an opportunist or a victim. There were those who defended her, saying it was a modern love story of overcoming class barriers. And there were those who attacked her, calling her a gold digger, a fortune hunter, a destroyer of traditional families. Marina had to learn to deal with public attention, something for which she had never been prepared. Raphael tried to protect her, but she didn't want to be protected. Not that way. "I need to face this," she said when he suggested she take a few days off. "If I hide now, they'll say I have something to hide. They'll say I'm weak." "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. I need to prove it to myself." And that was exactly what she did. She continued working, continued living her life, continued being herself. When journalists approached her, she answered with politeness but firmness, "My personal life is private. What I can say is that I am happy and that I earned my job through my own merit." Rosangela, her mother, had a mixed reaction. On one hand, she was impressed that her daughter had hooked a billionaire. On the other, she was scared of all the attention and the possible consequences. "Are you sure of what you're doing, Marina? These rich people are dangerous." "I know, Mother, but for the first time in my life I'm making a choice for myself. Not out of obligation, not out of necessity. For me." Her younger sisters, Julia and Camilla, were fascinated, especially Julia, 17, who saw Marina as a movie heroine. "You're like Cinderella, but the warrior version." Marina laughed. "Cinderella had a fairy godmother, I only have myself." "And Raphael?" 15-year-old Camilla added with a mischievous smile. "Yes, and Raphael." The relationship between them was different now. There were no more artificial barriers, no more fear of admitting what they felt. But it wasn't a perfect fairy tale either. There were real challenges, real differences, adjustments that needed to be made. Raphael had to learn to respect Marina's independence. He wanted to give her everything: a better house, expensive clothes, travel, financial security. But Marina refused most of it. She accepted help to pay off the family's most urgent debts, accepted a simple apartment closer to work, so she wouldn't have to take 2 buses every day. But she insisted on continuing to work, on paying her own bills, on maintaining her autonomy. "I don't want to be supported," she explained in one of the difficult conversations they had. "I want to be your partner, not your dependent." "I know, but let me help you at least a little, not out of pity or charity, but because I want to make your life easier." "And you think money makes everything easier?" "No, but it helps. And you've suffered enough. You deserve a little comfort." Marina sighed. "All right, but slowly, at my pace." "At your pace," Raphael agreed. Marina had to learn to trust. Trust that Raphael wasn't going to give up on her when the novelty wore off. Trust that he truly loved her, not out of pity or temporary fascination. Trust that she wasn't going to wake up one day and realize she had made a mistake. Therapy helped. Raphael suggested it, and this time Marina accepted. She began weekly sessions with a psychologist who helped her process years of humiliation, of struggle, of feeling that she was worth less than others. "You spent your whole life feeling invisible," the psychologist said in one of the sessions. "And now that you're finally being seen, you're afraid they'll see something that isn't worth it." Marina nodded, tears streaming down. "What if he realizes I'm not special? That I'm just a poor girl who got lucky?" "Marina, you didn't get lucky. You worked, you fought, you stayed true to yourself even when it would have been easier to give up. That isn't luck, it's strength. And that's why Raphael chose you. Not despite who you are, but because of who you are." Meanwhile, Raphael faced his own battles. Beatrice didn't speak to him for an entire month. When she finally gave in, it was for a cold conversation in her office. "You destroyed years of planning," she said without even looking at him. "I destroyed years of manipulation," Raphael corrected. "There's a difference. You're being naive. That girl, Marina, her name is Marina." Beatrice clenched her teeth. "Marina, then. She won't withstand the pressure of this world. Sooner or later she will give up, and you will be alone. Or maybe," Raphael leaned forward, "she will teach me that there is life beyond this world of appearances and power games, that there is something real, true, that is worth more than any strategic alliance." "You're talking like an adolescent in love. I'm talking like a man who finally knows what he wants. And if you can't accept that, it's your problem, not mine." Beatrice looked at her son for a long moment, and then for the first time her expression softened, just a little. "Your father would have said the same thing." Raphael blinked, surprised. "What?" "When I wanted to end our engagement because he refused to follow certain social conventions. He said exactly that I could accept it or not, but it wouldn't change who he was." Beatrice sighed. "And I learned to accept it. Because in the end, what we had was real. Not strategic, not convenient. Real. Mother, I don't approve of your choice. I still think you could have done better, but..." She paused for a long time. "If this is what makes you happy, I won't fight against it anymore." It wasn't a warm hug. It wasn't total acceptance, but it was a start. Alberto Brandão was removed from the board unanimously when the evidence of his coup attempts came to light. He tried to sue Raphael, but the evidence was irrefutable. In the end, he left the group completely, taking only the small percentage of shares he was entitled to by inheritance. With him out of the way, Raphael fully assumed the presidency of Grupo Brandão, and one of the first things he did was implement changes. He created a scholarship program for employees of humble origins to attend college. He established transparent hiring policies based on merit, not connections. He opened a reporting channel for harassment and discrimination. "You're using your position to make a difference," Marina said, proud when he told her about the changes. "I'm using my position to correct old mistakes. This world needs to change, and if I have the power to start that change, I will use it." 6 months after the scandal, Marina and Raphael took their first trip together. Nothing extravagant. A weekend at a simple inn in the countryside of Minas Gerais, away from cameras, away from spotlights, away from everything. It was there, sitting on the porch watching the mountains at sunset, that Raphael asked the question again. "Are you ready?" Marina knew exactly what he was talking about. "Ready for what?" "To marry me, for real this time." Marina turned to face him. Her heart beat fast, but it wasn't from fear. It was from certainty. "Are you sure? After everything? After all the scandal, all the trouble, all the mess I caused in your life?" You didn't cause a mess, you brought truth, and yes, I'm sure, surer than I've been of anything in my life. Raphael took a small box from his pocket. When he opened it, Marina saw a simple, delicate ring with a small but beautiful stone. It wasn't ostentatious. It wasn't extravagant. It was perfect. I don't want a huge party. I don't want a gala event. I want you, just you. So, Marina Cardoso, will you marry me? Marina felt the tears, always the tears, but now they were of pure joy. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They married 3 months later, in a small and intimate ceremony. Just close family and true friends, no lists of strategic guests, no social politics, just love. Marina wore a simple white dress without excesses. She was walking down the aisle alone when, halfway there, Beatrice stood up and offered her arm. May I? Marina hesitated, surprised. Then she nodded. Beatrice accompanied her to Raphael, and before sitting down whispered, "Take care of him, he can be stubborn, but his heart is good." "I know," Marina whispered back, "and I will, always." The ceremony was moving, simple, true. When they exchanged vows, Raphael said, "I promise to be your partner, not your savior. I promise to respect you, to support you, but never to diminish you. I promise to walk by your side, not in front of you or behind, but side by side. And I promise every day to show you that you are loved, not for where you came from or where you arrived, but for who you are." Marina, crying, replied, "I promise not to be afraid of being loved. I promise to believe that I deserve this. I promise to be strong when you need it, vulnerable when I can, and always true. And I promise that, no matter how many storms come, I will face them all by your side, because I've learned that I don't have to face anything alone ever again." When they were declared husband and wife, the kiss was accompanied by sincere applause, and Marina, looking around, saw smiling faces, her mother crying with emotion, her sisters radiant, Paolo and other co-workers who had become friends, and Beatrice with a small, approving smile. The party was joyful, with Brazilian music, homemade food, and lots of dancing. No formal waltzing in a luxury hall, samba, forró, genuine laughter. When they were finally alone, already in the early hours of the morning, Raphael hugged Marina and said, "Do you know what's funny? I spent my whole life thinking I knew what happiness was, money, success, recognition, but I only discovered what it truly was when I found you." Marina rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I spent my whole life thinking I would never be enough, that I would always be fighting to prove my worth, and you showed me that I was always enough, exactly as I am. You are more than enough, you are everything." And in that moment, in the simplicity of that embrace, Marina understood that she had won, not because she had conquered a rich man, not because she had moved up in social class, but because she had conquered something much more valuable, the certainty that she deserved to be loved, that she was indeed worth it, that she was enough. The women who laughed at her that night, who mocked her grey uniform and her humble origin, would never understand. Because for them, value was always measured in money, in surname, in appearance. But Marina had learned that true value lay in authenticity, in the courage to be who you are, in the strength to keep standing even when the whole world tried to knock you down. And Raphael? Raphael had learned that true love was not in the places where he had always looked. It wasn't in strategic alliances. It wasn't in the candidates who were perfect on paper. It was in the honesty of someone who didn't try to be anything other than what she was. It was in the courage of a woman who faced humiliation and still maintained her dignity. It was in the simplicity of a look that hid nothing. Years later, when they told their story, and they would tell it because stories like this need to be told, some would say it was luck, others would say it was fate. But Marina and Raphael knew the truth. It was choice, the choice to be true in a world of masks, the choice to be brave when it would be easier to give up, the choice to believe that love is worth more than anything money can buy. And when Marina looked back at the girl in the grey uniform who cleaned halls while being ridiculed, she felt pride, because that girl had not changed. She hadn't sold herself out. She hadn't pretended to be someone else. She hadn't abandoned her values to fit in. She had only learned that being invisible was a choice, and that being seen, truly seen and loved for what she really was worth every tear, every struggle.